And we are back on the Jim Leach Show on 970 WMAY, the news and talk in Springfield. This hour of the program brought to you by Carpenters Local 270, with pride and integrity, building our community. Last night, Springfield School Board held a special meeting. You know, I planned my vacation so that I would be out of town when the school board met. And what do? They call a special meeting when I come back. There's just no escaping them. Thank you, board member Scott McFarland. I have a feeling you were somehow involved in this, but Scott, are you there? Good morning.
Good morning, Jim. Yeah, I kind of was.
Well, we understand the reason for it. Of course, you have to make sure all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed to get this new search firm in place. And so now, finally, more than 2 months after Superintendent Walter Milton left his post, we now have a search firm hired to start this process. But it's a process that may actually lead to a new superintendent not being seated until next year, next summer. I know you were pushing for something, a more accelerated timeline than that, but it looks like the consensus among the board is that it may very well require that full year to find somebody and to give them time to put their affairs in order and to wind up being in place here. Can you just explain again for people, you know, why is this taking so long, and why are we going to wind up being 15 months from the time that Walter Milton left, potentially until a new superintendent is in place?
Yeah, sure. The search officially started last night with the hiring of that firm. So that's one of the bigger issues, is just the search hadn't begun until yesterday. What's going to happen now is we'll have several focus group meetings, community meetings, to gather information about what the community is looking for in terms of a new superintendent. And based on the timeline that was given to us last night, by December, somebody will be selected. The deal is the firm believes that to ensure you get the best candidate, you need to give that person up to 6 months to leave their current position if they're at a current position before they come to us. Now, that person may start earlier than July 1, but July 1 would be that the latest date. Me personally, I wanted to start with a January 1 goal and go with that, and then move towards a later date if we needed to. That way we're not going to have to worry about having 4 superintendents in a little bit over a year. But you're right, the consensus of the board was to shoot for that July 1 date, and so that's what we're going to do.
And again, as you pointed out, there is still a chance that the person you settle on may be available sooner than that, may be in a situation where they could leave at mid-year, or may not even necessarily be a current superintendent, maybe be an assistant or something, where it would be easier for them to start a job on January 1. So it's still possible we could have a new superintendent sooner than next summer.
Potentially. I would say probably if we do, it's going to be April or later. That's just an assumption I have.
And so we would still wind up then with that situation of overall 4 superintendents: Walter Milton, Bob Lemming, who cannot work straight on through until a new superintendent is hired because it would affect his pension payments, and then whoever gets put in there in the interim. What does that do then for the district, for long-range planning, for budgeting, when you don't have one person who's going to be in charge and who has that ability to know that, hey, this is the job and I can make the tough decisions?
It makes it difficult. The one piece of longevity we're going to have will be the school board. So it's going to be up to us, and then also Mr. Lemming, and then whoever takes over his position when he is finished, to ensure that we are planning for the 13-14 school year and the 14-15 school year, because we'll probably have a budget for both for the 14-15 before that new person comes on board. So it's going to be a rough year in terms of planning long term, but we're going to have to do it.
You noted that there's going to be focus groups and large group meetings and things to sort of, and even an online survey to get a sense from the community as to what you're looking for in the next superintendent. Ultimately, though, the decision will be that of the school board. You'll make the decision as to who you're going to hire. So it really, I guess, that question is one that should be asked of all of you. So I'll start with you. What are you looking for in the next superintendent?
Sure. My 3 criteria I'm looking at is I want somebody who has experience in an urban district. When you're dealing with 30-plus schools, you need to have experience with a diverse population in a larger city. So somebody who's only dealt with 2 or 3 schools at a time is not going to be on my list. I want somebody who has experience working with a tough budget. We're going to be either very close to the bottom line, or we'll be deficit spending fairly soon. And we're going to need to have somebody who has the experience in working with that and finding ways to trim a budget and also build up reserves going down the road. And then I want somebody who has a vision for the city and for the district. We need somebody who can come in here and see what Springfield is now and have a good idea of where we can be 5, 10 years from now, and somebody who's willing to work with the members of the community, with the city, with the county, with the state to ensure that we're moving this district forward.
Should be a very interesting process, and we'll be hearing a lot more about it in the weeks and months ahead. Let's talk some more about the vision aspect of this, seeing where we are and where we're going. And I understand this was something that you were addressing last week at the meeting when I was unable to be there while on vacation. But you were raising an issue for something that I think for a lot of us has been sort of a settled issue, the consolidation of rail traffic onto the 10th Street corridor. There was a big push by city and county leaders, everybody saying 10th Street is the way to go, 10th Street is the way to go. But you brought up last week that that 10th Street plan is going to have some real serious ramifications for the school district, particularly on the north end, particularly Lanphier High School.
Mm-hmm. And that's the area that I represent, so it's been rather important to me. And I brought this issue up almost a year ago, and I'll continue to bring it up. One of the issues I have with the 10th Street corridor is the plan they have currently is the corridor is going to go right through that EPA building on North Grand, which if you drive down North Grand, you'll notice that will be less than a half a block away from Lanphier. And along with that, there will be an underpass right before you get to Lanphier going east, and then there will be an overpass in front of the Memorial Stadium, Robert Roberts, going towards the 19th Street corridors. So it's going to be a lot of construction, and when it's done, a lot of rail traffic and automobile traffic right there by our high school. So it's going to happen. They're going to consolidate. The votes were already taken at the city and county, and we all know it's going to happen. What I want to see happen is have the district involved in that process so they understand what we're looking at logistically with our facilities and with our students to ensure that when this does happen, it happens the safest way possible.
Is there any way to minimize those effects, though? Not just the construction impact, but afterwards, as you said, you're going to have trains rolling very, very close, and they're already pretty close, but even closer to Lanphier High School, not to mention what it may do to Memorial Stadium, the nearby Robin Roberts Stadium, and all the traffic coming in and out of there. I don't know what it's going to do as far as access into and out of Lanphier, but is there any way that you can see to minimize some of those impacts or make it less disruptive?
Well, one of the ways to minimize the impact is to make sure that the engineers and those doing the construction understand that area. When I talked to some folks over at IDOT almost a year ago, when I was looking at the large map that had this all laid out, I asked them how we planned in terms of these students and folks getting in and out of the high school and getting in and out of football games, baseball games, and their answer was they hadn't really thought about it. So they need to have that discussion. They need to have that input. And I'm not sure what the answer is going to be, but having us at the table is going to be it's going to lead to that answer.
It is a tough time to be a North End school board member because not only are you dealing with that, but you've also got the fact that 2 of the school buildings in your sub-district are now being vacated because of the fact that the board voted earlier this year to close Pleasant Hill and Wanlis to move those students over to the Feichens building where the Capital College Preparatory Academy had been. Give us an update on that whole process. Let's start, first of all, with just the fact that all of those kids are now going to be bused and sent over to Feichens. They've had a chance to see the school. The teachers have had a chance to see the school. People adapting to that part of it okay, as far as you know?
Yeah, there was a parent meeting over at Feichens a few weeks ago that I was involved with. They now have a new principal, Chris Colgren, who was actually the principal of CCPA. So he understands the Feichens building and that area of town, so that's going to be very helpful. And the parents are very open and the students are very open to the move. It wasn't a move that I wanted. I fought tooth and nail against it. But now that we're here, everyone's being open to it, and we're just working now to ensure that that transition's smooth, and when the kids start up in August, that they've got a building that they're ready to go to and that everyone's happy with.
And is that
going to be hard, but it's what we're working towards.
Well, is that building? I mean, is in good shape? Is the Feichens building going to be set and ready to handle that influx of kids?
Yeah, it's going to be the largest elementary school we have, but Feichens can handle the size, and it already had the upgrades that Wanlis and Pleasant Hill did not have, which is one of the reasons why they decided to move the students over there. So in terms of facilities, it's an old building, but it'll be able to handle it. And we're going to have a good staff over there. A lot of the Wanlis and Pleasant Hill staff is moving over there. We'll have some new folks over there too. And in terms of that, we'll be set.
And I know that you have raised concerns about having two vacant school buildings sitting right in the middle of residential neighborhoods in your sub-district. What are the long-range plans for those buildings, for the Wanlis and Pleasant Hill buildings, and are they going to be sitting vacant for the foreseeable future, or are there plans in place to do something with those buildings?
Right now, in terms of having folks in those buildings, they're going to be vacant for some time. I actually spoke to Mr. Leming about this yesterday, and there's no plan yet to either use those buildings for administrative use or student use in the short term, and there's no plan yet in the long term of how we're going to utilize those buildings. So that's something I'm going to bring up again next week and continually push, because we need to either utilize those buildings ourselves or give them or sell them to somebody who's going to use them. Because as you know, Wanlis is in the middle of Grandview, Pleasant Hill is in the middle of that neighborhood, and with those schools being empty, it's going to kill those neighborhoods. So we need to do something quickly to help as much as we can to support those areas of town. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, is selling those buildings a possibility? Is that on anybody's radar at this point?
It has been discussed, but it's not been moved forward yet. I would say that if we're not going to utilize these buildings and we have no intent to use them anytime soon, we do need to look at that. Because the last thing I want to see happen is like we have over by Southeast, and we have the old Matheny building, which is still shuttered up years later. We need to make sure that those buildings are being used somehow by someone.
A lot of things going on and a lot of things to keep track of. I know you're working hard on all of it. Scott McFarland, Springfield School Board member, joining us live this morning. Scott, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
No problem, Jim. Anytime.
6:53, Culver's West on Wabash has Colby Jack Pub Burgers for a limited time. That's at Culver's West on Wabash.
970 WMAY.